Welcome to the Prospect Warehouse podcast. This is your host, Tim Kanak. You can find me on X at Fantasy Aceball. And with me today is the great, the powerful Eric Cross at Eric Cross MLB. Eric, all over the place. Just came off of a radio spot. Now jumping on here. What else you got going on right now? Like, yeah, you're super busy. So I want to ask you, like, what's like the newest thing? What's like the newest thing that people should know about off the top?
Oh man, what isn't going on this time of year? I mean, this is the grind, right? I mean, the whole season really is, especially for us with prospect and dynasty work. But obviously, spring training and draft season for fantasy baseball. So got the obviously the podcast is in full swing, and rotoballer content and all my rankings on my Patreon right now. I'm going through team prospect rankings, already the positionals. So yeah, a lot of stuff keeping me busy.
Yeah, out of the tool shed and into the warehouse right now. I
Yeah.
guess you're just not allowed into a normal house. It's
Nope.
only tool sheds, only warehouses. Hopefully, you're
Only
not in a
random
doghouse.
buildings, yeah, not which is funny. That's how I would describe my the house I bought this past fall. It has a quote unquote garage, but I like to call it's like a garage and a shed had a baby because it's like it's bigger than a shed, but not like big enough to like really park your car in there consistently type of thing. So like it's got a workshop and then some storage area, but it's kind of like one of those in between buildings. So it kind of fits with us being tool shed and warehouse and all that.
Workshop. I like that.
Yeah,
That's what you should call it. Is the workshop or like
pretty much is, yeah.
yeah, it's like a blacksmith station. You need to get an anvil in there and like.
Yep, that would definitely fit out there for sure.
All right. So I actually just got back from a talking about what we were just doing. I just got back from the first spring training game that I went to this year, and lucky enough, I was able to catch. I'm going to throw it on the screen here. I was able to catch a JJ Weatherholt bomb open face here, and a bunch of people have been sharing this out. I was like, make sure you give me credit if you share this. So I'm going to throw this on the screen here, and that way we can give everyone a good look.
Bam.
Whoa! Yeah! All right. I'm sorry, but yeah, he every time with JJ, it's like like really loud contact.
Yep.
And that was Devin Williams' first pitch as a Met. So,
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure Mets fans are already running for the exits and sounding the alarm.
Yeah. I also in this game I saw a ton of prospects. I saw Ryan Clifford, AJ Ewing. I got a home run of him also
Nice.
off of Team Tense. So he got a really nice shot. And then who else? Oh, Quinn Matthews started the game, and he started the game with a leadoff plunk of Carson Bench. So there's some there's some YouTube video through the whole game. So if you're interested in seeing it, I got a lot of prospects in. So you can check that over on my X if you're interested. But we are going to be talking about catchers today. So starting with catcher prospects, we're going to start from the backside. We've got number 20, Cooper Ingle. Number 19, Walker I don't know if it's Janik or Yannick. I haven't heard him announced at a stadium yet. So I guess we'll see. I'm going to see the Astros, I think, next week. And if he plays, then I'll find out and I'll report back on the pronunciation for him. 18, Caden Bodine. Recent draftee, first-round pick for the Orioles, was then traded to the Rays in the Boz trade. So pretty interesting that the dude was just drafted and then already traded. 17, Gabriel Dalo, and then 16, Ethan Salas. And you left yours as a mystery. You're like, I'm like, which guy do you want to talk about? And you put Salas or Ingle. So I'm going to let you lead the way here. Which one of those two guys do you want to lead us off with?
I'll go Ingle, but real quick, just how the mighty have fallen with Ethan Salas, right? Like, remember when he was like a no doubt like top 25 prospect when San Diego pushed in the Double-A when he was 17. I mean, and now he's still kind of toiling in the high A, Double-A range. So he might be a good buy now in dynasty leagues, actually, with how low he's kind of ranked at this point. But Cooper Ingle, though, I mean, he is not flashy whatsoever. And I actually, when I was writing him up, I feel like about 2 weeks ago or so, I kind of said he gives me like catcher Nolan Shanwell vibes, where it's, really good contact and a really good approach, just not that exciting in the power department. And, he's been, he had 10 home runs last year, 11 the year before that. I don't think he's much more than like a 12 to 15 homer guy, even at peak, but he's always made really good contact, like basically above 80% everywhere he's gone. Super low swinging strike rate, walk rate and K rate basically were identical last year. He actually had one more walk than strikeout. So a guy that probably hits, for a decent average, 260 plus average. Guy that's going to give you a good OBP. He's always been an elite OBP guy. So if you play in those types of formats, gets a little bump there. But really probably never got is more than like your second catcher in a two catcher format, just given the fact that he's, again, limited to, probably 15 or less home runs every year. But he's got to be a major league catcher. He's on the cusp now, probably gets up to Cleveland at some point this year. So more of like a high floor, boring guy, but he's a guy that's probably going to stick around for a long time, given how good of a contact and approach profile he has. But yeah, I just wish he had. If he had like average game power, I think he'd be a top 10 catching prospect. But I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because like Doc is like the number one Caleb Durbin guy of all time. And I'm like, you just love these little short guys. And then for whatever reason, he doesn't like Cooper Ingle. And I'm like, what's with that? I was like, this is like the short catcher guy. Like you should love him.
Yep.
But 83% contact rate, 90% zone contact rate. So just amazing contact rates, like you said. And then a 16.9% walk rate last year with a 16.7% K rate. So more walks than strikeouts last year for Cooper Ingle. So Nolan Schanuel, that's like the perfect comp for him, really. That's like exactly like
right
what he's doing in the minors. Like it's just the EVs are just not great. Like a 90th EV of 101.8 is kind of sad. But the average EV is pretty solid. 87.3 is not bad. It's like actually much higher than you would expect for someone with a 101.8 90th.
Right.
But I guess like something to be positive about him on for power wise is he had a 150 extra base hit plus, which is basically a max on that category. Because extra base hit plus is basically like how many extra base hits does this guy get per plate appearance against anyone else at the same level. So that's taking him against other players at the same level per plate appearance. And 150 is the max on that statistic. We like capped it so it didn't like really go like off the chain because you'd have guys with like a 300 or whatever because you'd have these like weird outliers and the small sample sizes that would really skew it. But yeah, he maxed out on that. So the dude does hit a lot of extra base hits for a guy without a lot of exit velocity power, without a lot of raw power. Like he basically like his game power is like maybe above like the raw power, right? Kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of doubles. He had like 36 doubles last year in 120 games. Yeah, 24 doubles in just 93 games year before that. So yeah, a guy that just drives the ball into the gap a good bit. But yeah, just not a lot of that over the fence pop. It has a little bit of a higher ground ball rate. Nothing too extreme, but that does limit him to some degree. But yeah, he's just a really good pure hitter. That's why like I usually suck with comps. People always ask me that. I'm sure you get that too. Like, oh, who does this guy comp to? I'm like, I don't know. I'm terrible with these, but sometimes it hits me right in the face with a comp. And I'm like, this just gives me Nolan Schanuel vibes. Where it's like, all right, the guy makes a lot of contact, draws a lot of walks, keeps the K rate in check, but just kind of mediocre overall game power. So yeah, that's really the vibe I get with Cooper Ingle.
If you're watching on YouTube or X, that home run that he just hit was super impressive. That was down and in, and he was able to crank that out. Like that was here's actually a slow replay of it. That's a very like, man, those are fast
speed, baby.
Yeah, that was an impressive home run there. So yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's pretty underrated. People are gonna just look at the EVs and probably ditch him. But if you're in a points league, especially, also he could be up. Like the only thing stopping him from playing right now is Bo Naylor, and Bo Naylor's probably on his last legs. This might be like his final chance to make it this year.
We kind of know what Bo Naylor is at this point. I'm not saying like he's done, but he's still pretty young. But I think we know that Bo Naylor is not really, probably not the long-term option there in Cleveland. We'll just say that.
Yes, for sure. So the guy that I want to talk about is Gabriel Dalo. I actually just drafted him in the Scott White Dynasty League. But I love this dude, and we're not gonna have stats on him to throw up here because John is like anti DSL, so we have no DSL stats on all our Tableau pages and stuff. But 302, 408, 518 slash in the Dominican Summer League last year, with again more walks than Ks, 13.6% walk rate, 12.4% K rate. And this is what's super impressive because most of the guys in the DSL have just atrocious contact rates. he had an 84.4% contact rate. And this is not a repeat either. He was 17 years old doing this in the DSL. A lot of the guys that have a season like this are like repeat guys, only a 6.3% swinging strike rate. So I'm super excited to see what he does when he gets to complex. And I've been calling him, I think that he's the Rainiel Rodriguez of this year. If you're going to look at like any DSL catcher that's going to be jumping up levels here. And he's also a shorter dude too. So like he's kind of similar, like shorter guy, good power, good hit tool. So I think he can kind of like really play into that Rainiel Rodriguez type thing. I mean, that's like big shoes to fill. But I think if you're looking for who is going to be that guy for this year, because people are always like, who's going to be the this of this year? Like, I think that he could be the Rainiel Rodriguez of this year. So
I like it. Yeah, bold, but I like it. I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential here. We saw that last year, and really the two things that I look to take away from the DSL, because all the times the data is kind of skewed at times, and but the two things that you can absolutely take away from that I really look to, especially for a guy that's thought of as like more of a bat first type of guy, the approach, and he had more walks than Ks. Like if he had like a higher K rate in the DSL, major red flag for me. So the fact that he was showing good approach, you love to see that. That's what top notch hitting prospects should be doing in the DSL, and even at the complex level, given the level of pitching, especially the command and control of pitchers at that level being very subpar. So good, check that box. Then just showing some good raw power. I mean, and he showed that, 7 bombs in 41 games, had 7 doubles as well. It's kind of showing that, that above average or better power is real. So yeah, definitely, good to see those two things last year in the DSL, and we'll see what happens when he comes stateside this year. But yeah, I agree. Definitely a lot of breakout appeal here with VO.
Yep. Number 15 is Leonardo Bernal. I actually saw him today, and he had a really hard hit single. 14 is Jimmy Krooks, so 2 Cardinals back-to-back. 13, Joe Mack. 12, Ramon Ramirez. And 11, Moises Ballesteros. And again, you threw me through a loop here, Cross. You're like, hey, it's going to be Joe Mack or Moises Ballesteros, so I can't even tee any video or up or anything. I've got to just wait for you to cue me up now. So drum roll. Which one are you going with?
I'll go with Joe Mack because I feel that I'm fairly lower than most on Joe Mack because I think real life he's could be a really solid catcher. Like I don't think an all-star, but I feel like he brings more value in real life rankings than in fantasy rankings. He's a really good fielder. He's got a good arm, so guy that's going to provide a lot of defensive value to Miami and allow them to shift Agustin Ramirez to like first base or even DH, whatever they want to do. So yeah, in terms of real life, he's a good catcher and he's got power. Like that part of the game I've never denied either. He's an above average power bat, but at the same time, I think which kind of gets not talked about enough is the fact that he's definitely a below average contact hitter. I mean, contact rate at AA was like around 67%. AAA, it ticked up a little bit, but he's still below average, both in zone and overall contact, higher swinging strike rate in that 15-ish percent range. And he had a 27% strikeout rate last year. So I think this is going to be a guy that, maybe he can hit 15 to 20 bombs over a full season, but I think he struggles to hit for average. I mean, he hit 257 last year in the minors, 250 in AAA. I feel like he's probably more like 230. So, yeah, 230 and 15 to 20 is still a decent outcome, especially with the defense he'll probably provide. But just for fantasy purposes, I've always had him ranked a bit lower just because that's just not super appealing to me. And I think the floor is lower offensively than all people want to say. So, yeah, I'm definitely a bit lower than most on Joe Mack.
I'm going to throw you a little curveball here. Here's the sneaky thing about Joe Mack. He could actually be much better in the majors than in the minors if the Marlins play this right. His splits,
which is also are they going to do that though?
Yeah, his splits are atrocious. This guy is terrible against lefties. So the good thing is Agustin Ramirez is a righty, so they could easily have Joe Mack only be the starting catcher against left-handed pitchers, against right-handed pitchers, and then whenever there's a lefty on the mound, just throw Agustin as a catcher. Because as a lefty hitter against righties last year, he had 273, 351, 528 with 20 bombs out of 21. Against lefties, he hit 195, 296, 268, with 1 home run. So he was absolutely atrocious against lefties. So if they only play him against righties, he actually might be better on like a per plate appearance level, because that's what's bringing his batting average down. 273 average against righties is pretty solid. But the big thing for him is really great angles. 23.9% air pull is a beautiful. That's beautiful. 14-degree average launch angle, 36% sweet spot, and this guy's launch angle distribution is pretty insane. So I'm gonna let me throw this back up here real quick. Just so if you're watching, you can see. I have his batted ball distribution on here. Look at this chart right here for launch angles. Like basically barely anything is like below 0 degrees. And if it is, it's like barely below 0. Like look at all these hits that are between 0 to 40. So he's not popping anything up and he's barely hitting anything into the ground at all. So really, really great angles for Joe Mack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the power is absolutely there. And that's actually interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, because they could do something like that where, all right, Ramirez, he plays what, like a third of the time at catcher, and then, first base DH is the rest of his playing time. And then that leaves Mack for like, what was that, 95, 100, 105 games, something like that, kind of like a 2/3, 1/3 split. That might work. I mean, I think you bring up a really good point there with his splits because, yeah, he was basically a non-factor against lefties last year. 28 strikeouts in 98 plate appearances, so like a 29% K rate there, and it's not really hitting for really any power. You mentioned that 268 slug, that's a 0.73 ISO, just not really that good against lefties. So yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
Yep. So my guy in this tier is going to be Jimmy Krooks. Of course, Cardinals fan. I got to pick a Cardinal. It'd be like a crime for me not to, especially because the Cardinals are so good at developing catchers.
You guys have so many catchers. It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. The Cardinals, I don't know what they're going to do with all these guys, but it's a good problem to have because there's a lot of teams that can't develop a catcher at all. Yep. But Jimmy Krooks, this is a dude who actually made the majors last year, and he's kind of like a hit power guy with like plate skills. Like I don't know how great they really are. 70% contact is okay. Zone contact 80. But the good thing is he gets to good angles when he does hit the ball. So that's why if you're looking his fScore, his hit tools in 101, it's not because of the contact rates. It's because when he does hit the ball, he's getting to very good angles. So just in case you're wondering how that happens, 90 average EV, 104.6 90th, 110.9 max. So there's some power in here for Jimmy. And Jimmy's a good country boy. This guy, I think, went to Oklahoma. So he's a bit of a country boy. And this guy is like, he's got the Cardinal spirit. This is a perfect Cardinal because just like good old Matt Carpenter, this guy does not wear batting gloves. So let's get some video of Jimmy Krooks up here. And Jimmy Krooks, again, he played in the majors last year. There is Pedro Pajes there and kind of like blocking him. So that is something to be concerned about. But Ivan Herrera is going to be the starting catcher this year for the Cardinals. Apparently they really want to make him a catcher. Heim really wants to try that. So they're going to try to make Herrera a catcher. And I think that like the fallback option is if like it works, like, okay, we don't need Pajes anymore. They can always trade him at the deadline and get something. And then Jimmy Krooks comes in. Or if it doesn't work or someone gets hurt or whatever, then you've got Krooks there. And I think Krooks would be the starting catcher before Pedro Pajes. Pajes is just more like the backup catcher guy if that happens. And Krooks is also a very good defender, like really good arm, really good defender. So that's another thing when you're talking about catchers is like you want to make sure that your catcher can actually be a catcher when you're drafting for dynasty reasons. You want to make sure that that catcher is actually going to stay a catcher if that's like your ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean, really the two spots that you have to worry about that more than the others are like, all right, can catchers stay behind the plate and can shortstops stay short? I mean, you see all the time catchers move to, maybe a corner outfield or DH first, usually DH first base is the more, likely path there, but then shortstops, can they stay there? Do they move to third? Do they don't have the arm? They move to second. They move the outfield. We've seen all those scenarios time and time again. So, and with St. Louis, I mean, like I said, every year I go out to Arizona, it's like, all right, which two St. Louis catching prospects am I going to see this year? It's like they always get to send a couple guys out there, which is good. I don't get a chance to see any St. Louis, minor league teams. They have no team anywhere even remotely close to me. So the only time I can see those guys is out in Arizona every November. But yeah, you mentioned they just develop catchers. They make that a point of emphasis, and they really invest a lot in these guys. Where again, like every year, like multiple of their spots for guys they send out to the AFL are catchers. Is they really invest heavily in the development of these guys. But you only can play one catcher. I mean, well, two if you have a backup, but not all these guys are going to make it. Not all these guys are going to be fantasy relevant, especially if they do decide to try to make Herrera behind the plate a thing again. But yeah, Krooks is like sneaky good. I don't know if he's ever like a starting caliber catcher, but he's a guy that's had pretty solid numbers in the minor leagues. Decent field of hits. A little bit of pop there too. But again, they have Leonardo Bernal's in the mix too. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all shakes out because they have all these guys. Krooks and Bernal probably starting in AAA. And then they already got Herrera, Pages, Yoho Pozo. How are they going to make all that work? That's the real $1 million question with the Cardinals right now.
Yep, for sure. So we're going to get into the top 10 now. Number 10 on my list is Blake Mitchell. So I actually have Blake Mitchell. He kind of snuck into my top 150 here, Eric. It's kind of a nice coincidence that actually, no, 11 of these catchers are in my top 150, which is kind of a lot for catchers. We were talking about it when I was podcasting with Doc yesterday, and I was like, I think this is the most prospect catchers that I've ever had, like this high in my rankings. Or like kind of flush with good prospect catchers for once, which is when we were talking and I was like, what podcast do you want to go on? You're like, I'd like to go on catchers because like the catchers are actually pretty interesting right now.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I'm almost like becoming a catcher guy. I mean, lately it's just between all the young talent already in the majors. Obviously last year we had guys like Drake Baldwin and Ramirez and all of them emerge, and obviously Basio and then Carter Jensen. Those guys will be making an impact right away this year. And then the prospect ranks are really good too. It's like it's become a really interesting position throughout. And I think it's one of the deeper positions in all baseball right now, which is weird to say that because when have we ever said that before? But yeah, like I have in my top 100, I have 6 guys in my top 100. Then mine kind of falls off a little bit. But yeah, I don't remember ever having 6 catchers in my top 100 for a fantasy focused prospect ranking. It's kind of crazy, but I think they're all warranted for.
Yeah, exactly. So I got Blake Mitchell at 145. My comp for him is a lefty, Shane Langeliers, and this guy was hurt, so he didn't play a full season. So if you look at his stats, like give him a little bit of a like, be like, okay, I know he was hurt, like, and he was like playing in partial, like little increments here. So he didn't really get into a rhythm. But he did go to the fall league, and so while we don't have exit velocity data from high A, we do from Arizona Fall League, where he had a max EV. He had a home run at 116.5 miles per hour. So this guy has big boy power for a catcher. And in the Fall League, he also had a 93.2 average EV. So there is power here. Like I give him a 30 out of 40 on the hit for now, 40 out of 50 on the plate approach. But I think there's 60 grade power in here. So, like if not maybe like 65, if he actually can get to it pretty consistently. But I think Mitchell's pretty interesting just with those exit velocities. And like his pedigree as a former first round guy, I feel like it's worth kind of like sneaking him into these rankings to see if with health this season, he can kind of like make progress forward for once instead of like, hopefully he doesn't get hurt again, like Ethan Salas and just kind of like fall back in line. But like, I think that with the power that he's shown, there's enough interesting things here for fantasy that it's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, Mitchell, I think, is probably the most difficult catching prospect for me to rank, or at least one of them, because you've seen him put together some impressive tools, right? Like you mentioned, the power is absolutely one of them. It could be a 20+ homer guy over a full season. And he's also shown that even though he's not a fast guy, he's kind of aggressive on the base pass, and a guy that might give you some steals. Maybe it's only a handful, but still, I mean, he's a guy that's always decided to run a little bit. He had 12 steals last year in just 60 games, 26 before that. So maybe that is at least some part of his game moving forward. And he also walks a ton. So like there's some good there, but then just the contact skills haven't been great. I mean, part of it is he can be a bit too passive at times. So getting himself into too many 2-strike counts, and then that runs the K rate up a little bit. But also the contact skills just are below average in general. He's been he was below 70%, around 66% last year. A little bit of a higher swing and strike rate, nothing super terrible there, about 13.5%. But yeah, that's just the question I have: is does he make enough contact to be an everyday guy, or is he just one of those powerful backup catchers, down the road? I think that's kind of the question I have. But yeah, definitely a lot of intrigue here with Mitchell.
Yeah, he's got a big swing. If you're watching on the YouTube or X or whatever, you can see he's got a pretty long swing. It's like long, it's long, like almost like going for the fences almost every time.
Yeah.
But we like him on our pod because Doc is boys with Callan Moss, and Callan Moss was like, watch out for Blake Mitchell. That guy's a beast. So I'm gonna take some of the players that played with him. I'm gonna take,
Yeah,
maybe they're just best friends,
absolutely.
but who knows? So it's like, but I'm definitely gonna listen to when a player played with a guy, and they're like, hey, who do you want to watch out for? Like, who's the up and coming guy? Doc asked him that, and he said Blake Mitchell. So
Yeah.
just an interesting thing to watch right there. Number 9. This is a guy who's been around forever, so people have prospect fatigue, which is it's kind of sad. He's only 23 years old now. That's Harry Ford. So Harry Ford, I think I heard that he's going to be on Great Britain again for the World Baseball Classic. So we'll be able to look forward to him in a British uniform or whatever. But Harry Ford now it's a Seattle there, but he's not Seattle anymore. He's with the Washington Nationals now. And I think that a lot of people are sleeping on him for this year because from what I have heard and read, there's a chance that he could break camp and be like the starting catcher for the Nationals. They left it open that the job is not Keibert Ruiz's, like, no matter what, that Harry Ford has a chance to grab that job and run with it. And so if you can get a prospect that can grab a starting role right out of camp and run with it, that's pretty good. And if he gets it, he's going to have room because the Nationals are like basically resetting. They were like in the middle of a rebuild and they were just like, this rebuild sucks. Scrap it. We're going to start over all over again. So like, they're basically like the White Sox now from last year. So like, they're like a year behind the White Sox. So like, they're going to just throw these. I think if these guys are ready, they're just going to throw them in there. But Ford has good contact, and talk about Shanwell, like plate skills. Like this dude also is a big time walker. He's got steals, 35 steals in 2024. So like this guy can steal bags. He's got some power. He's pretty bad on the base pass last year, but I think he'll get back into it. So you could have maybe like a 15-15 profile or something from a catcher here if he actually can like break camp and win the starting gig. And you can see the EVs are pretty solid too. So like pretty decent EVs, 88.8 average. That works. That's not, that definitely works for a catcher. So how do you feel about Harry Ford?
I mean, I like Harry Ford a good bit, and I always kind of have. I think I've always been, a little bit higher than most on Harry Ford, but it does feel like there's been some prospect fatigue because he debuted in 2021. It feels like he's been around longer than that. He's one of those guys where you look at the age and you're like, man, I thought he was like 3 years older than that. But now that he has a more clear, I mean, Keibert Ruiz is still there, but he's no Cal Raleigh, obviously. So much clearer path to playing time, much easier path to playing time. And there's still a lot of fantasy friendly skills in Ford's profile that you guys just listed off. Like he's always been a guy that walks a ton. I mean, his lowest OBP and walk rate in the minor leagues at any level, lowest OBP was 2024, 377 in double A. Lowest walk rate, 13.8%, and that was just in 65 plate appearances at the complex back in 2021. So he's a guy that's always been like 14+% walk, 375 plus OBP. Power, speed. Like you mentioned, you don't usually get both from a catcher. Very rare. But he's shown maybe not a huge power guy, but he's always shown that all right, he could be over a full year, mid-teen somewhere, 13 to 17, something like that. Yeah, the steals dropped off a lot last year. He was 3 years in a row over 20, including 35 in 2024. Then it went down all the way down to 7. But he's a good athlete, maybe one of the better athletes in all of baseball for catchers. So I do think that he'll at least have some speed element. Maybe it's not the 20 plus that you saw in the lower minors, but he could be absolutely a double-digit steal guy and maybe give you roughly the same amount of steals as home runs, as you kind of alluded to. So good contact skills. They got even better. They ticked up last year, which was nice to see. So, yeah, he just gives you a little bit of everything. So I think he's a guy that could really sneak up on people, especially now that he's maybe in line for like 400 plate appearances this year. And so I'm intrigued.
Yeah, Washington's a nice place to hit too. So I think that'll be interesting to see. I almost wish that they would get like a vet to kind of be the leader of that team because they have all these young guys. It's like Is
Right.
Dylan Cruz I think Dylan Cruz is older than James Wood. Is he like the oldest? Is he going to be like the leader? Because I mean, like
Yeah,
he's supposed to
who
lead the
who
team, but
who is like the veteran on that team? I mean, it would have been like kind of Mackenzie Gore, then obviously he's gone now. So I'm trying to think like who's got the
CJ
most.
Abrams. It's like
Yeah, like who's.
sadly,
I'm looking at it right now. Who has the most MLB experience? So the most MLB experience in the lineup is Luis Garcia and Keibert Ruiz are both just over 4 years of service time. Abrams is just over 3. I guess they got Miles Mikolas in that rotation now, but yeah, there's not a lot. There's only 4 guys on the like the projected starting opening day roster for this team that are over 4 years of service time. It's Josiah Gray, Miles Mikolas, and then the 2 bats I just mentioned. So that's not a lot of experience on that team.
yeah. So you've got a guy who eats lizards leading the pitching staff, and then you've got a guy who gambles until 3 a.m. leading the lineup. So that's great. That's
Yeah,
fun.
it's gonna be. I mean, they get some
Yeah.
fun. Like obviously James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Dylan Cruz, some exciting young talent there for sure, and then they get some good prospects too. But yeah, it's gonna be a long year overall for Nationals fans. I'm sorry to say.
That should be maybe the team that they follow. If you want to, that didn't they followed the Red Sox? What was that 2 years ago? Maybe you follow the Nationals just for those guys. Just let's see what
Yeah, maybe
let's just follow CJ Abrams's nightlife here.
that'd be something to make an episode of The Hangover.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so number 8 is Jefferson Quero. Jefferson Quero finally healthy. The exit velocities are lower than when he was actually like fully healthy. I guess like 2 years ago now at this point. But the good thing is he's still young. He's like still 23, and he basically had a full loss season, like 1.5 lost seasons basically. I think he got hurt in like the very first game of the
Yep.
year in 2024 and missed like the whole season. And then he missed half of his season last year. So the exit velocities aren't quite there yet. But besides that, everything else is looking pretty good. 80% contact rate, almost an 88% zone contact rate. So we've got a good hit tool here. We have above average plate skills. And I think if he can regain the EVs, we have a really nice catcher here. Now, what are they going to do? Because they also have William Contreras is kind of the question. Because I think Jefferson Quero is probably MLB ready at this point in time. So is he going to like come in and be the backup? Or are they going to like start plugging William Contreras in as a DH to like keep his legs fresh? I mean, like he's one of their better hitters. And, you've got Yelich also who has a DH. So it's like, what do you do there? But like, I guess this is the question for Quero is like, how much action is he actually going to get this year? Because I think he is MLB ready. And I think he could, like, if he was on another team, he might be a starter. Like he's good enough to be a starter right now, probably on like 10 MLB teams. But with William Contreras ahead of him, where are the plate appearances going to come from?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and he's a guy that I've always been, I think, a little bit lower on the most because he always kind of fell into that better in real life than fantasy bucket for me. He's a good defender, though the arm isn't like super great. But you got to wonder how much of the power kind of dipping last year was because of the previous injury, because that was a torn labrum that he suffered on literally the first game of the year. He had like 2 plate appearances or whatever it was in 2024. So, a torn labrum, that's definitely something that can, has been known to, either sap entirely a hitter's power or extremely limit it. So, yeah, you saw last year the power, the quality of contact was not there. And he was never a huge power guy to begin with, probably more like middle of the road in terms of power. But last year it was like a 29.5% hard hit rate and, EV, just under 87 miles an hour. So, yeah, not great there. But I kind of want to see what he looks like early this year. Like, he'll probably start in AAA again. That's where he was, basically all of last year outside of, some rehab games at the complex. But I want to see, like, give him like a month, 2 months and see, like, all right, what does that hard hit rate look like this year? Is it still kind of toiling down in the 30% range, or is he bouncing back? Is he like, 38, 39, 40%, like he kind of was, in previous years before the injury. So I think he's a guy that I'm kind of in wait and see mode. It's just to see how he bounces back now being further removed from that injury. But yeah, I kind of think like he's not super exciting for fantasy. And then you add in like what you mentioned about the, just where does he fit in with this Milwaukee team long term? So there's some question marks here, but I want to see how he looks early this year, though.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, my comp for him is Wilson Contreras. He has like this same exact swing. He just reminds me so much of Wilson Contreras. Kind of similar body type too. He's pretty big. I think he's going to grow
Yeah.
into more power. So I think that as long as he gets consistent ABs, we're probably going to see some some better power from him for next year. So I like Quero a lot.
I feel like he has like the typical like catcher's body. Like you think of like
Yes.
a catcher and like boom, like that's kind of what I think about is like a guy that's like, maybe, a little on the stockier side, but not like in a bad way, like a sturdy frame. That's absolutely what his frame is.
Yeah, unlike the next guy we're going to talk about. So right now we're in top 100 territory. So you said you have 6 catchers in the top 100. I've got 7, and it starts with this next guy here, Alfredo Duno. I've seen a ton of Alfredo Duno because he spent like basically a year and a half in Daytona. So I've seen a lot of him with the Daytona Tortugas. This guy is humongous. This guy's like it says 6'2", 210. And I've talked about it before. I don't think that's accurate. I think he's actually like 6'4". I had a picture of him. Who was he standing next to? He was standing next to like one of the shorter MILB guys, like a 5'5" or 5'6" guy. And I took a picture and I put it on X. This was last year at like one of the games. I was like, Duno could just eat this guy, or like this guy could just climb, like he could climb into Duno's body like one of those like suits, like an Iron Man suit. He could just like
Yeah.
climb like right into him, like no problem. So Duno is super interesting. I like him better for points leagues. The hit tool, like, and I've seen him a lot live in person. He's actually way more athletic than you would think for a dude who's huge. But the swing is really pretty long. I don't know if the hit tool is ever going to get above like a 40. Like I've got him at a 40, 45 right now. I don't know if he's going to get to that 45. So this is like one thing and one reason why like the next guy we're going to talk about, the reason I like him better, because most people don't like the next guy I'm going to talk about better than Duno. But I have a potential 70 grade power on him. Really think he can get there. The guy is humongous. And I've seen him hit some really, really big far home runs. And I actually have put video that I've seen in person in Florida where it's hard to hit home runs. And this guy just mashes. So Duno, super interesting for power. The dude walks 19% walk rate, only an 18% K rate. So amazing plate skills. He'll even run a little bit, 6 steals. I've seen him run. So he'll even run a little bit. But the hit tool is just pretty long. So I don't know if it's going to get there to pass like a below average hit tool.
I love Duno. I really do. And, for lack of a better term, like he could do no wrong at the end of this, the minor league season. Like the last, where was I? had to tweet out. There it was. Yeah, the last 19 games, 80 plate appearances. He hit 377, 513, 902 with 5 doubles, 9 bombs, and nearly double walks and strikeouts. So, yeah, he ended the season really, really hot. Overall season was, obviously pretty good as well. But the final 3.5 weeks or so, which is absolutely ridiculous for him. But I actually have 8 catchers. I had my filter wrong. I had a couple guys that have dual eligibility on my sheet not included. So I actually have 8 guys in my top 100 for catchers and one more that's just outside. So 9 in my top 110 overall. So and Duno is my 5th ranked catcher personally. I have him 48 overall. The 4 he's behind are Carter Jensen, Rainiel Rodriguez, Josue Brceno, who I do think is more of a first baseman, but maybe he plays some catcher, and then obviously Sandy Basio. So, pretty elite company there to be kind of near those guys in rankings. But yeah, I 100% agree on the power. It easily plus, like easily plus power, probably double plus. And then when you factor in, the ballpark that he's going to be hitting in, a couple years from now, that gets really exciting. And even if there are some contact concerns, I mean, this past year he was about 71%. So we're not talking Spencer Jones levels of contact, but he is below average contact. But I think maybe given the fact that the quality of contact is so good, the approach also pretty solid as well, like really good, and the ballpark. So I think this is a guy that could hit for a decent average just because we've seen that. I mean, the guy I kind of always go to in this type of conversation is Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers does not have good contact rates, but he does, he walks a good bit. And when he does make contact, he does a lot of damage. So that helps you kind of run a little bit of a higher BABIP. Then the average is probably better than what your contact rate might indicate. So I think Duno could still be a decent average guy, just given all of that I just said. And Great American Ballpark has been known to make below average hitters look above average at times in the average department. So yeah, he's a guy I'm really, really excited about. I was actually kind of bummed they didn't give him the bump to high A late last year. I mean, he spent all of the last 2 years in low A, even though he only had 32 games in 2024. So hopefully he's a guy that they maybe push a little bit more this year. Obviously, high A to start, maybe a double A cameo later in the season. But yeah, he's kind of, when you look at offensive upside, especially with that power, he's someone really, really exciting for fantasy purposes.
Yep, I've got him at 61 overall in my
Okay.
rankings. So
Yeah,
you're
so
a little bit higher, but we're
we're
kind
into
of
like 13 spots per overall. That's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, just a masher, man. Look at that. He's definitely bigger than 6'2". Whoever put 6'2", that's crazy.
Yeah, well, some of those are like they get measured like when they first like sign or or get drafted, and then it's like sometimes it's like a couple years. So you're like, yeah, that guy is either a lot taller, B has put on like 20 pounds, or C both. So yeah, it's definitely kind of gets wonky at times with those.
Yep. Next on my list, number 6 is Eduardo Tait. So I've got Tait all the way up at 45. I'm definitely the high guy on him compared to other people. But I really like his hit power combo. I think he has like a really advanced hit power combo, especially for his age. People are going to be down on him because after the trade to the Twins, he kind of had a rough time. But the thing to remember is this guy did get advanced. So he's actually younger than Duno, but he did get pushed to high A. So while he's younger, he also got pushed. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of looking at what he did last year. And Tait also being a catcher, getting traded in the middle of the season, you have to learn all new pitchers and handle a whole new pitching staff. And I've also seen both these guys play behind the plate. I think Tait is going to be a better defensive catcher than Duno. Well, I do think Duno's not bad. He could definitely stick a catcher. He's kind of big, so it's just like weird to see such a big dude as a catcher. But I mean, like Salvi's done it before, so it's not like it's like impossible or whatever to have like a 6'4" catcher. I think because I think he is like 6'4". But Tait I think is a little bit better defensively. Seeing both in person, but Tait, the contact tool, 77% contact, 85% zone. And that was as an 18-year-old last year who got to high A, and 14 home runs, 105.9 90th EV, and a 113.8 max. Super impressive for an 18-year-old to have a 113.8 max. So when you combine these EVs with the kind of contact that he's putting up, he just is a super impressive prospect to me. 150 extra base hit plus as well. So he is also getting other extra base hits besides just the bombs. So I think Tait is a little bit underrated. I might be a little high on him compared to other people if you're like trying to like kind of hedge bets and you're not going to just draft him that high. But I really like Tait. I think there's a lot of hidden value here with him.
Oh, I 100% agree. I don't have him quite as high as you, but he's an absolute top 100 guy for me, and I'd probably like a top 75 guy for me right now. So, yeah, I think you really need to throw that high A, the stats out the window, because he was 18 in high A. That's aggressive in general, even more so for a catcher. Like you mentioned, all the other things that he has to worry about. It's not this, oh, let's just go up and hit. He has to worry about calling a game and everything that goes along being a catcher. So there's a lot more into it than it would be for a first baseman or like a right fielder or something like that. Not to like discredit those positions, but for a catcher to be in high A at 18 is really impressive. Like as old as some high school seniors last year, and he was in high A, for the last 2 months of the season. So yeah, I'm giving him a pass there. Just looking at the profile, which again I always say, take all minor league numbers with a grain of salt and just kind of look at the profile, sometimes, because that gives you more of an idea with these guys. And you mentioned like the power, absolutely impressive. Pretty good angles as well. He gets that pull side pop pretty consistently, and the contact skills have been pretty solid. They even ticked up a few percentage points last year from the previous year. Keeps the strikeout rate in check. Maybe he's a bit aggressive, so maybe he could learn to be a little more patient. That would even unlock further offensive potential for him. But for where he's at now in his development, you have to be impressed, right? So I think the Twins, obviously they got rid of Yohan Duran, but I think they got a really good long-term player here in Eduardo Tait. So he's one that I'm going to be really excited to see, how he adjusts now that he'll probably spend most of the season, I'd guess, this year in high A, after getting that cup of coffee last year. So I think he's going to be in store for a big year.
Yes. The next guy that we're going to talk about, kind of a cheat, to be honest, because he hasn't played catcher since 2023, but it's Ralphy Velasquez. So Ralphy Velasquez with the Guardians. Love this dude. I don't know where he's going to end up, Eric. I don't know, because he's been playing a little bit outfield even. So it's like, I don't know if he's going to end up in like left field or first. But the bat is phenomenal, and I've comped him to a lefty only, Victor Martinez. So I think that he is like, I don't know. I keep him in the catcher rankings just because like Fangraphs still has him ranked as a catcher. So, or they have him labeled as a catcher. So like, until that goes away, like, I guess I'll probably keep ranking him as a catcher for, position, prospect stuff. But I just don't, I guess like he's probably not going to stick there because it's been a couple of years since he's played there. But the dude, phenomenal year last year, really great second half. So I like Ralphie a lot. Like I said, kind of a cheat to put him here. But I'm going to pull his second half numbers up right here because he was ridiculous. Like after the break, second half last year, 324, 413, 588 slash, over 1,000 OPS, 10 home runs, 80% contact rate. So he basically did everything that you want. And also he can hit lefties as a lefty. 367, 436, 755 slash with actually 5 home runs as a lefty. So he's actually better against lefties than against righties during this time period here in the second half. So pretty interesting for Ralphie Velasquez, who I've got at 44 overall, but I don't really know what position he's going to play because he's playing first, outfield. So I don't know where he's going to stick. What do you think about Ralphie?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it feels like they're almost taking the same route as they took with like CJ Kafis, where it was like a lot of first base and they kind of tried him out in a corner outfield spot. Long term, I would say first base. I don't think he's going to catch at all long term, but in general, I like the bat a good bit. And he's a guy, when I just wrote up the Cleveland system about like 4 or 5 days ago. And I feel like every system I go through, because this is where I can really dig down into the profiles more so than other times a year. And there's always, I feel like, a guy either positively or negatively in every system that I'm like, oh, hey, I need to adjust the ranking. Like I'm much higher than I thought on this guy or much lower. And that was the case with Velasquez in a positive way because I realized I had him ranked too low, admittedly so. Because you look at, the profile is really good. Like, it's really like a first base DH type of profile, but the power, it's, above average plus power potential. Like this could be like a 25, 30, maybe even low 30s home run guy at peak. And, the approach is pretty solid. He's, improved, swing and miss a little bit. Not that it was ever really bad, but he trimmed the K rate last year. He's always been, an above average walk rate guy and, kind of above average contact too. I mean, last year around 77, 78% in contact with the good power, with the good approach. So a guy that I think is going to be, a pretty decent long-term hitter for this Cleveland team. And maybe even a guy that we see maybe get, a cup of coffee late in the year, probably more of a 2027 guy, hopefully we have a season so that he could debut them. But yeah, I like Velasquez a good bit. It's definitely a bat first profile, not really much of a defender, not giving you any speed whatsoever. But that bat, but in both in terms of contact, approach, and power, could be a really nice combination there. So yeah, I'm definitely liking Velasquez long term.
If so, I guess the question that I want to ask you is Duno or Ralphie? Where are you at? Like, I know Ralphie is probably not going to be a catcher, but like between those two guys, where are you at? Just the hitter as a hitter.
I have them ranked pretty close in my rankings, but I do lean Duno. I have Duno 48, and I have Ralphie at 62 right now. So they're again in kind of the same tier. It's kind of a bigger tier in that middle part of my top 100. But yeah, I think the deciding factor might be just the ballpark that each of them play in long term. I think you can say Velasquez is a better pure hitter for sure. I think you could say that Duno has the advantage in the power department. So maybe like those two things kind of like even themselves out. I would say slightly better approach to Duno, And then you give him that ballpark as well. So that's kind of like, I think, the deciding factor for me. But I like them both. I think they're both going to be, pretty good bats for fantasy long term.
Yeah, for sure. Number 4, this is going to be a not just a pretty good bat for fantasy, but like maybe a superstar for fantasy long term. Rainiel Rodriguez with the Cardinals. He is bumped down on my list a little bit just because of proximity. I actually moved Carter Jensen. I had Carter Jensen below him when I released my top 150. And then like I'm just like, but he's Carter Jensen's already in the majors. Like I just feel like if I'm drafting for dynasty, I'm probably just going to take my money now when I can. So I bumped Carter Jensen ahead just because he's like already there. Not because of skills. I actually like Rainiel Rodriguez's skills better for long term, but I do love that Carter Jensen's going to be right there and he hits the crap out of the ball. So we'll talk more about him later. But Rainiel Rodriguez is number 4 on the list. This is a dude that I saw a ton last year. He was in Jupiter. So I don't know. I've probably seen him more than most people who are not professional scouts, maybe more than a lot of other actual professional scouts. But Rodriguez is he's an Ingles king. Like this guy is just like one of the best Ingles hitters in minor league baseball, if not like the best. He's like probably up there with like Florentino is like 2 of the most impressive Ingles hitters in my opinion. But this dude, air pull 29.2% is absolutely insane. And he was 17, 18 years old last year, crushing the ball, almost a 90 average EV, 105.2 90th, 111 max. I actually saw him today take some hacks. He was trying to hit a home run for sure. Like it was like a 13-2 or something like that. And he was just trying to blast a home run. But in the one plate appearance that I saw him, but he had a really sharp double the other day too in spring. And this guy made it to high A as an 18-year-old and actually had success hitting in high A. He did better almost. Like I guess 13 plate appearances, but 308. So he's actually hitting in high A. So he was making it. But over an 80% contact rate, 86% zone contact rate for a dude with this kind of power. 11 bombs at that age in Jupiter, which is a really tough place to hit. 136 extra base hit plus. I think he is going to be a star. You're just going to have to wait a little bit. Like he's a catcher. Generally, catchers are going to move slower up levels unless they decide to move him off position. And they're like, we got Bernal, we got Krooks, we're good on catcher. Let's just get that bat. Let's have him focus on hitting and try to get the bat to the majors. So unless they do something like that and they move him off catcher, like most of the time, catchers will only move like 1 level per year. Like your superstar hitters at other levels, like Connor Griffin, might move like 2 levels a year. But like catchers, even the really good ones usually only move 1 level a year. So I don't know like how aggressive the Cardinals are going to get with promoting him and like how much they just want to get the bat in the lineup and like if they're going to give up on the, like having to be a catcher and defend because like you don't want a catcher to have to learn multiple pitching staffs like over the course of the season. That's going to affect them at the plate. So like how aggressive are they going to be with him? Like I assume he'll probably be in high A the majority of the season, if not the whole thing. Like even no matter how good he is, like, are you really going to, if he's like balling out at high A, are you going to make him get promoted to double A and then have to learn a whole new pitching staff on the fly in the middle of the season? That's kind of rough for a kid that you want to be like an amazing hitter. You're kind of putting a lot of pressure on him defensively and like calling pitches then and to like not screw up your double A pitchers to do that. So that's like the one thing that I worry about with him is kind of like how soon is he going to actually get to the majors? Because I think that he's going to be a top 10 prospect at some point, maybe even as soon as this year. It's just like, how fast is he going to move?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a question with catchers. The fact that he like just turned 19 in January, so he'll be 19 for this entire season. So I agree. I think 95% of it is at high A. Maybe he gets a cup of coffee in double A to end the season, and then with the idea of putting him there for the bulk of next season. So I think when you're looking at an ETA, it's probably 2028. Maybe if they push him late 2027, but probably more so 2028. But yeah, the bat, no doubt. Like we might not know when the ETA is going to be, but we have a pretty good idea, as much as you can have for a 19-year-old, how good the bat's going to be. But so far, so good. Like he has just been really, really impressive. Especially in high A. I mean, he was 18 should be in low A. 18 years old, 60 games, 13 bombs, like, really good walk rate, 14% walk, under a 20% K rate. He did only hit like 249, but the contact skills, as you kind of mentioned, were much higher than you'd expect. kept the swing and strike rate in check, has the massive power. So a lot of exciting things. We could be looking at like 55 grade hitter long term with 60 plus power. I mean, this could be guy that's hitting like 270, 275, 25 plus bombs, and truly being one of the best offensive catchers in the game. But again, on top of him being a few years away, we already talked about this, the absolute glutton of catching prospects they have at various levels of the minor leagues. So you got to wonder, even if he can catch, and I think he could. And, defense is kind of still a work in progress, but really good arm. So I think there's a possibility if the defense improves a little bit over the next year or two that he could be a guy in general that could stick a catcher. But just a matter of like, who do they feel is the best long-term option there? We'll see. I think that still needs to be answered over the next year or two. But the bat is exciting. It will be exciting no matter what position he has next to his name, whether that's catcher, which obviously we would love, or if it's first base, whatever. I think that's going to be a really exciting blend of hit, power, and approach. So, yeah, he's a guy that has a lot of hype, maybe one of the most hyped prospects right now, not named Connor Griffin. But, after what we saw from him last year, I think the hype is warranted right now.
Yeah, I threw 50 out of 60 on the hit for him, 60 out of 65 on the plate approach. I think it's already just super advanced for his age. And then a 55 out of 70 on the power. So definitely love this guy. Number 3 is going to be Josue Brceno. I have Brceno ranked 1 spot ahead of Rainiel Rodriguez in my rankings. Big part of that is going to be proximity. So just better, closer to the majors. It's going to help. Pretty advanced hit tool for Brceno. And you already kind of mentioned, I think, with Brceno, like what position is he going to be at long term? He's kind of like hovering between catcher and first. He still is playing catcher, unlike Ralphie. So like he actually, I think, had like 50 games or something at catcher over the last year. But obviously they've got like Tyron Lorenzo hanging around. So it's like, okay, if Lorenzo actually makes it as a prospect and makes the majors, then Brceno is probably going to play less catcher. But if Lorenzo can't hit enough to make the majors, then Brceno will probably play more catcher. Would be kind of like what I would say on these guys. But I love Brceno a lot. I threw a 50 out of 60 on his hit tool, 55 out of 60 on the plate approach, 55 out of 65 on the power, 114.3 max. So like he has gotten into a lot more power basically since the Arizona Fall League of 2024. Before then, he really had like almost like no game power. And I was like, this guy is huge. I was like, this guy's 6'4". He has to have some power, because I think like that year he only had like 2 or 3 homers or something like that. And then all of a sudden the fall league, he just went off. And I was like, oh, there it is. It just hadn't shown yet. He hadn't gotten into it, whatever it was, the angles, or he was just trying to get the mechanics to a point where instead of making contact, he's hitting for power. He has one of the best. If you make like a scatter plot between like contact rates and then exit velocities, he's like one of the better prospects on that scatter plot of like high contact and high exit velocities. So how do you feel about Brceno, and where does he land on your catcher rankings, Eric?
Yeah, he's number 2. He's only behind Basio for me, and I've said that he could be every bit as good as Basio long term. And I think that's not even close to being consensus thought process right now. Obviously, Basio is everyone's darling at this position, and rightfully so. I mean, I'm not poo pooing Basio. This is more like a pro Brceno stance, because I already liked him a good bit before I saw him in the AFL, and then just seeing him out there. I mean, he was easily the best hitter out there that year. Maybe he wasn't the biggest name out there, but he was easily the best hitter in that league. And he won the Triple Crown, I think, that year, first time in like 20 years or whatever it was that there had been somebody winning the AFL Triple Crown. I know it's just, the Arizona Fall League, but it's running like 25, 30 games, whatever they play out there. But he has just been a guy. Then I saw him again last year a little bit in Double-A, and the stats at Double-A weren't great, but the Eastern League is very, very pitcher friendly. It is not a hitter's league whatsoever. A lot of poor weather up in the Northeast, obviously. So it's not like you're hitting out in the California League or the Florida State League or the PCL or anything like that. So I don't really take much stock in his kind of underwhelming slash line in Double-A. But yeah, he is kind of one of the better blends of hit, approach, and power in the minor leagues. I definitely 100% think he's a first baseman long term. though I'm not entirely shutting the door on catcher, but with Dylan Dingler there, and again, if Lorenzo becomes the backup or whatever, I feel like first base DH is more of the long-term home for Brceno. But he's a guy where I just love the bat. I mean, he draws walks at a good clip, doesn't strike out. He's always been a guy that keeps the K rate in check. And now that he's really translating more of that raw power into game power, you really saw him take off over the last, 12, 18 months or whatever it's been. So, yeah, he's a guy. He's in my top 25 overall. I have him at 21 overall right now. I feel like that's probably one of the higher ranks on him that you'll see in the industry. But, yeah, I am definitely very much in on Brceno long term. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I've got Brceno at 29 and Rainiel Rodriguez at 30. And I had Carter Jensen at 34. But as I previously mentioned in my catcher rankings, and I was looking over this stuff, I'm like, I am going to jump him. Even though I think Brceno and Rainiel Rodriguez may ultimately have higher ceilings and probably also higher floors, Carter Jensen is going to be in the majors now. And it's like sometimes it's like, okay, I just want to get the guy who's already there.
Yeah.
He's already making it. He was already good in the majors too. So, like he can transition to the majors. He doesn't have to go up a bunch of different levels. And I don't think the hit tool is nearly as good as those two guys. You see like a 70.6% contact rate. Like I give him a 55 out of 55 on the hit tool, while the other guys have potential 60 grade hit tools. And the plate approach also is not as good. But I think there's just as much power as those two guys, and he has more speed. And like if you're in a roto league, that matters, right? So it's like I'll take that. If you're going to have a catcher who can steal some bags, 17 bags in 2024, 10 in 2025. So maybe he's like a 10 bag guy in the majors. He's pretty efficient on the base paths, 85%, 91% stolen base rates. So he's pretty efficient on the bags. And this dude gets into power. 94 average exit velocity last year is ridiculous. 107.3 90th and a 110 max. So he hits the ball hard incredibly consistently. 15.8% barrel rate. You got to love that. So I think Carter Jensen, these three guys are pretty close in my rankings anyway. I'm like, well, Carter Jensen's already there. So let me just bump him to number 2 since he's already there. And so that's kind of where I'm at on it. So how do you feel about Carter?
Oh, man, I love Carter Jensen. He's a guy I've bumped up a ton over the last, end of last year, throughout the offseason. He's a guy that's risen a lot in my rankings. I already liked Jensen. Now I love Jensen. He went from that like to love in my rankings because, yeah, the power is just super elite. And you mentioned what it was in AAA. It was even better in the major leagues. Yeah, it was a much smaller sample size, but that power is legit. He was darn near like Roman Anthony, power, Nick Kurtz power in AAA. Like he was kind of like in that range in terms of his quality of contact. So ton of power. I mean, I think that lineup in Kansas City is going to be pretty damn good if they give him enough playing time. Now, I think you can see him, make a sneaky run at AL Rookie of the Year this year, moving the fences in. That's also pretty fun. And yeah, even though he's, power over hit, I mean, I think the contact is fine. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a high average guy, but, 260, I think is a reasonable expectation for him. And if that comes with like 25 bombs and, as you mentioned, maybe a handful of steals as well, that's a really fun all-around profile. I think if everything clicks, I mean, he's got the upside to be like a top 5 to 6 fantasy catcher if everything clicks. And that's saying a lot given that this position is super talented. I mean, it's going to be really hard to get up to that range just given that we already had some of the veterans up there. And then you add in the Baldwins and the Ramirez's of the world. So there's, good, Hunter Goodman too. So a lot of exciting young catchers in this game, but I think Jensen could absolutely kind of join that mix, kind of be one of the exciting guys this year, kind of like maybe be this year's Baldwin, this year's Ramirez, whatever. Yes, I like Jensen a lot. Like that power is legit. He absolutely cranks the ball. I think that Kansas City lineup is going to be really good. So especially in the power department, obviously Jack Caglione, Vinny P, Sal Perez, Bobby Witt Jr. That's going to be a fun lineup, and I think Jensen's going to be adding to that too. So hopefully he gets enough PT this year. That's the question. Obviously, they still got Sal Perez there, but hopefully between like catcher and DH, he gets 450, 500 plate appearances. I think this is going to be a really good offensive catcher. I am on board with Carter Jensen this high.
If you're watching on YouTube or X, I love how in this highlight reel, they literally had one of the highlights of a third baseman like ducking away from an infield fly ball. And that was a Carter Jensen highlight, is like him getting a hit when the guy's like ducking away from an infield fly ball. So that's kind of hilarious. Whoever put that together. But anyway, we're if you this should not be a surprise who number one is, unless you're just like, oh, he's still a prospect. I didn't know that. Like that's the only reason you should be surprised. But number one is Samuel Basio with the Baltimore Orioles. And it's kind of funny because like you were talking about Ethan Salas fatigue earlier. I feel like there was a time like 2 years ago where Basio and Ethan Salas were kind of like next to each other on my rankings, and like I probably for a lot of people, where I was like, these two guys are like the two catchers that I kind of like that are moving up, and then it's like one guy just rocket ship, and then the other guy kind of just has been floating around trying to stay healthy. But yeah, that's where we're at. But Basio is the man. I kind of would just say completely ignore the major league stats, Eric.
Yep.
He had 109 at-bats, and in those 109 at-bats, despite bad stats, he had a 187 BABIP. So he had atrocious luck in his time in the majors. And more or less, the first 100 at-bats for any hitter that comes up into the majors is not going to be good. Like most of them struggle in their first 100 bats. Even Nick Kurtz, in his first 100 bats, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't mashing. I think he only had like 2 home runs or 3 home runs or something in his first 100 bats. Gunnar Henderson was bad in his first 100 bats. Like everyone was. Even like a guy with a really good hit. Like I remember Alex Bregman's first 100 at bats. I was in a fantasy league at one point where someone dropped Alex Bregman after he was called up, and I picked him up because they were like so sick of how bad he was when he first got the call. Even Mike Trout was bad in his first 100 bats. So like, give Samuel Basio the benefit of the doubt, please. When it comes to him, like ignore the major league stats, look at the minor league stats. That's where you actually have bulk. It's not a small sample size. This is the kind of stuff you could be getting into. Like you could be getting into a 94.5 average EV, a 108.3 90th, a 115.9 max from a dude who's 20 years old at AAA last year. Like I have been comping Basio to Kyle Schwarber for a very long time. Kyle Schwarber also used to be a catcher. I think there's a lot of, between these two guys that could happen. And you'll take a Kyle Schwarber, I think. So like Basio is a value right now because people are going to look at the major league stuff. I think he's a value in redraft leagues, maybe not in dynasty leagues or in prospect, like if leagues where you've got pretty deep farms. But I feel like in redraft, there's a bit of a value on Basio right now.
Yeah, I mean, I got him as my starting or my number one catcher in the Tout Wars Draft and Hold League. I waited a long time on catchers just because it's so deep, and I'm like, oh, let me test this out and see if I can wait. I think I was like one of the last guys to get my C1 and my C2 in that. But yeah, I got Basio in round 12, so it was like it's 15 teamer, so that was pick like 170, whatever it was. But yeah, I like Basio a lot, and my comp for him again, I don't usually like comps. I'm usually bad at them, but with him, especially given that my comparison is a guy that I saw as a prospect, he gives me a lot of young Rafael Devers vibes, where it's damn near maybe not like top of the scale elite, like it's not like Judge elite, but like it's near elite raw power. The guy that gets to it consistently in games. And maybe the contact skills aren't like super great. I mean, they haven't been bad by any means, but he hasn't been a guy that's been giving you like above average contact rates. Like it was like 72%, whatever last year. And Devers has always been a guy that doesn't have like the greatest contact rates either. But just given the fact that it doesn't strike out too much, and same thing with Devers, or for the most part, Devers did have that 1 year with a super high K rate, but for the most part, doesn't have an alarming K rate and just does so much damage when he makes contact that I feel like Basio, even if he does have like a 71% contact rate in the major leagues, let's say, he can still hit like 260 while giving you 30 home runs. So and hopefully he gets enough time between catcher, DH, maybe even a little bit of first base. I could see that too. Obviously Adley's back in the mix this year and hopefully healthy. So I'm not sure how many games he does get at catcher, but hopefully enough to just retain eligibility at least at the bare minimum. But yeah, the bat is legit. I have him as my number 12 overall prospect right now, which is really high. I've always said that for a prospect to get that high without really bringing any steals to the mix, especially in a fantasy list, you have to be really damn good with the bat. And yep, Basio definitely falls into that category. So yeah, I agree with everything you said, Tim. I do think he's a good value, especially if you want to wait on catcher, get some upside, and if it doesn't work out, maybe you drop him in a redraft and get somebody else. But yeah, he is probably going to be a really good bat for a really long time.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. That was a tank right there.
Oh, he
So
just hits so many tanks.
yeah. Yeah. So there's your top 20 catchers, or at least my top 20 prospect catchers for you. And make sure that if you are not already subscribed and listening to the Toolshed podcast, that you go ahead and do that and follow Eric's work over on Rotoballer. Make sure you also subscribe to the MLB Data Warehouse. And if you can, if you want to fund my spring training adventures, buy the prospect package. It's only $29.99, which is not even enough money for me to buy one spring training ticket. I need two of those to buy one spring training ticket because these prices are outrageous. But if you want to fund my spring training adventures so I can get more cool video like I did with JJ and with Ewing, then please buy the prospect package, or just buy it because you want to win your leagues and get your draft stuff. But Eric, you got anything else on the way out here?
Yeah, just definitely, Tim, you do so much good work. So I definitely want people to support your stuff here. Obviously, we get to, the tool shed warehouse, merger here, support each other. It's such a fun time of year, and you've been doing such great work. So definitely, I echo. You definitely go out and get that package. It's $30. It's what is that in the grand scheme of things, right? So get some good data, support a good guy. If you want to support my stuff too, I have my Patreon linked in my bio. I put out a ton of work over there, and same thing over at Rotoballer and on Toolshed. So yeah, a lot of fun. This was a really fun position. So thanks for having me on. I always enjoy talking with you, man.
Yep. Awesome. Until the next time. Peace out, everybody.